Coming up on Chopper's Political Podcast.
Come on. That's like me saying I'm going to kick you in the shins instead of kicking you in the nuts.
Welcome back to Chopper's award-nominated political podcast. I don't talk about that enough. We are up for an award on this podcast, which is fantastic for us. So I bring you the best guest gossip, news and stories from our studios at GB News in heart of Westminster. My name is Christopher Hope. I am the political editor of this channel. We're approaching the end of the year, and for those loyal listeners of Chopper's Political Podcast, we have our annual date with one of the most recognisable voices in Westminster. He is, of course, Jeffrey Cox, with our annual Christmas reading. And he is with me now. Jeffrey Cox, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast.
It's lovely to be here, Chris. Merry Christmas to you and to all your listeners, of
Thank
course.
you. Yes, and they are growing tens of thousands a week.
And you're up for an award, and we're plugging for you, Chris. We're rooting for you. I will vote for you.
Now, Jeffrey Cox, you were our first guest on the podcast. We relaunched it in March last year. Back then, you likened the Tories' challenge to the Welsh Guards at Rorke's Drift. You could hear the Zulus coming, and the fate of your party was looking in trouble, and you were proved right.
Yes, it was, I thought, inevitable. You can't spend 5 years annoying the British public without reaping the inevitable consequence of it. And fortunately, as at Rorke's Drift, a few lonely stragglers survived who have now got to come together and rebuild the Conservative Party. And I think we've seen in the last few months that is taking place, but it will be slow and it will be difficult.
I think that Kemi Badenoch has staunched the bleeding. I think that she's held the party together. She's got some policies out the door which take the fight to the rivals. European Convention on Human Rights withdrawal being one of them, and no one has quit the party. Now, had that happened with a new leader straight away, if Robert Jenrick had won, there may have been a split in the party. That hasn't happened, and that is a positive for your party.
I think what Kemi is able to do is give a sense of the future. I don't think there's any other politician in the Conservative Party who could do that. When I supported her for the leadership, and I want to make clear I still very strongly support her, I thought she had the potential to navigate I think I used the metaphor of the great Shackleton venture from Seal Island to South Georgia with his crew. I think she has the potential to get to the destination. What she has is great potential. Yes. I think she's started now to fulfill it. I think she's beginning to look like the leader I think many of us thought she can be. But of course, there's a long uphill battle to wage, and I think she will know that.
And what happened to Shackleton? Was he rescued himself? He came home, didn't he, from Seal Island?
He sailed with his crew after the ship had foundered for 800 miles from Seal Island at the pole to South Georgia. And he got there safely with his crew. It was an unlikely journey.
And no one died. What a challenge for Kemi Badenoch. It's a long journey through stormy seas, 800 miles. I mean, she started out, as I say, with this ECHR withdrawal policy built on a 180-page document from Lord Wolfson. You're a senior KC. Do you mind that? Do you think this is respecting the legal process, the international legal structures we have already?
No, I mean, I've always taken the view that the Human Rights Act was a mistake. I think I opposed it at the time, though I wasn't in the House of Commons. I think that the common law traditions that we have are those to which we should look, as other common law nations do. And I think that it was an unfortunate detour, and I think that sooner or later most parties will have to come to that conclusion. Now, it doesn't mean that I think we should abandon the European Convention on Human Rights. I think there's no harm in us signing up to conventions that respect human rights. We're already members of the Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, the UN Covenant. The problem with the ECHR is that it has its own court. and that it purports to allow, indeed we've signed up to it, the right of individual petition, so that it becomes an appeal court against our...
Super court.
Exactly, against our courts, in effect. Now that was the mistake. The convention itself was not a mistake, but there is nothing inherent in such conventions that requires a central court to determine how human rights in the granular level should be interpreted in each subscribing member to the convention.
So just breaking that down, we couldn't just leave the Strasbourg court. The two things are interlocked.
Yes. Well, we signed up. Tony Blair signed up to the protocol, which made it a compulsory element of signing up to the convention itself. But in 1956, that was never the case. You could sign up to the convention, but you need not be part of the court. A save only state to state. So one state could bring against another state, just like the International Court of Justice.
So before 1998, when the Human Rights Act came in, which enshrined the ECHR in our law, we were in the ECHR then?
Well, we signed up to the right of individual petition only in the mid-late 1960s. I think it was Harold Wilson's government that did that. But from the 1950s to the late 1960s, there was no right of individual petition. The convention was just like the United Nations Covenant, which has similar rights in it, but there was no enforceable action in a court.
So is that the possible future if the Conservatives win, if the election, if Kemi Badenoch's 800-mile journey through stormy seas succeeds and she wins the election, and we do some form of withdrawal from ECHR, we go back to that before?
Well, that's what I've always advocated.
Is that possible? That's possible?
Well, it's possible.
Are there other members of ECHR in that situation?
No, there are none now, because the new protocol, I think it was Protocol 13, I forget now, which was signed by Tony Blair, and the right of individual petition that we signed up to in the late 1960s, now is a compulsory element of belonging to the convention. But there's no reason why that shouldn't be renegotiated. And it does seem to me that there's a very strong case for saying that states should be allowed to secede from the right of individual petition, but remain in the convention. Why would you make the good the enemy of the best, the enemy of the good?
We heard that about Brexit a lot, didn't we?
It's a compelling argument in my view, Chopper. I mean, the reality is that the subscribing to a convention may be a perfectly civilized and good thing to do. It is a symbolic declaration of your values. Not that I think the British require such symbolisms. We've achieved that a long time, but nevertheless, I see no reason why we shouldn't remain members of the convention. It's the right to bring actions before the court.
Well, that goes back to the heart of sovereignty, doesn't it? So people see the ECHR debate as why is there a foreign court which has precedent over our own courts here? It goes back, it's almost the unfinished business of Brexit, isn't it? Dealing with sovereignty, making the UK sovereign for its own affairs.
Well, I think it's partly that, but more importantly, I do think that there are subtle nuances and differences of cultural and civilizational approach to human rights in different nations. And I think courts ultimately have to reflect the sensibility of their own nation. And I do not believe there is a European-wide consensus on how specific rights should be interpreted. And the flaw, I think, in the argument is that there is some human rights perfection or absolute interpretation of a particular right that applies across jurisdictions and across cultures and nations. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a dangerous misconception. And I think national courts should interpret the rights that are applicable and enforceable in their own jurisdiction.
And we're seeing that with the small boats crisis, the rights to family life.
Exactly. The courts reflect the opinion in society.
But they don't, do they?
Well,
they haven't been. That's one of the problems.
They may sometimes take judgments that are unpopular, but they are, like anybody who lives in a particular society, reflects or she reflects the environment in which they live and operate. Now, it's inevitable that nations would interpret particular rights differently, and clearly, when you have a pressing problem like the problem we have with immigration now, and particularly illegal immigration, national courts should be interpreting those rights, and particularly because that's the way they will achieve legitimacy. People will not see a court distant from them in Strasbourg as being legitimate in their decisions over what people must accept here.
I think it was 27 of the 45 signatures of the ECHR last week signed some form of commitment to reform ECHR. You may have seen that. They want to...
It's inevitable. I mean, all of these conventions...
Can you do it through QMV, qualified majority voting, or is it unanimous, in which case some of the remaining numbers of those who aren't signing up to this 27 declaration of reform will block it?
I think it'll be a complicated negotiation, but let me be frank. I think it is inevitable now. The world is changing. It has changed. That these conventions, including the European Convention on Human Rights, but the Refugee Convention as well, will have to be reviewed. It's what I said 5 years ago when I was in the government as the Attorney General. It's the conventions that need to be renegotiated and reviewed. But that, of course, is enormously complicated because you have to have a widespread agreement.
Just thinking again about Kemi Badenoch on her journey through the stormy seas, how does she get the public to forgive her for things that didn't happen when she wasn't Prime Minister, and she was obviously a minister in parts of it, but the failures, I would say, to control migration properly, all these areas would be blamed on the Conservatives?
Well, I mean, it's not for me really to advise Kemi, but if I were to advise somebody in this situation, I would discover the authentic feeling and anger and indignation that the country is feeling about what happened over the last few years. I think we lost sight of our sense of responsibility, our sense of mission and purpose. And I think she's begun to discover the primary condition of gaining attention again, which is authentic anger at the way in which this Labour government has conducted itself over the last 12 months. I think she needs to display anger also about the way we let down the country over the last 4 or 5 years, because we had a golden opportunity to change this country, even though COVID hit us.
When we got that 2019 election.
Yes, we had an 80-seat majority. We could then have really trenched into the problems of this country. Yes, we were faced with an unprecedented emergency, but that's no excuse when you're leading a nation. We needed to tackle at root the problems of this country, and we didn't, and that's why we were elected.
Yep, I mean, no excuse, I think. And
that is what I think we've got to admit, accept, and display the same anger that this country, for the last few years, have been let down by its politicians.
Was it possible? I mean, COVID happened 2 months into that Tory government you're describing in February 2020. Then there was a 6-hour break. I remember it vividly in February 2022 at midnight to 6 a.m. Midnight was the ending of the COVID restrictions. 6 a.m. Russia invaded Ukraine, and the energy shock happened, and that meant that £500 billion was spent by the last government because they felt they had to deal with $400 billion on the COVID, $100 billion on the energy shock. That money was spent, wasn't it? And with Labour support, don't forget. So it was accepted by all parties, not some parties and maybe Reform and other ones, but the main parties accepted that was spent. So surely that would have thrown any government off course.
Well, if ever I'm in the dock, Chopper,
with you?
I'm going to ask you to represent me.
It
is, of course, there is what we lawyers call good mitigation, but it's not a defence. When you're elected into government, you have to have short-term, intermediate-term and long-term plans. And it was vital that we started work right down deep in the bunker on how we were going to change this country, because the country is sailing like a vast vessel with its lights on and the music blaring on deck towards some very difficult waters. I'm trying to resist the Titanic metaphor, but the fact of the matter is we are a country with a massive debt, with an aging population, with a state that is unsustainable, a state apparatus that is unsustainable. And unless the Conservative Party, with its historic mission, its historic discipline, with its coherence that is born of the ancient traditions that it has, the great men and women who've served it, unless the Conservative Party develops the mission that will change this country, no other party will do it.
Reform thinks it can, Jeffrey Cox.
Reform will implode on the first contact with reality like a bubble blown from a child's wand. It simply won't be able to maintain the discipline and coherence that will be required to fulfill this mission. I respect a lot of those in it. I like a lot of them, but you need regimental tradition, Chopper, to be able to face the enemy in the trenches.
Liz Truss, I say to you, Liz Truss. I mean, that was a moment which atomized the tradition you're talking about.
Well, I don't agree. You can't atomize a tradition 250 years old that has been served by Churchill, Thatcher, and a galaxy of others. That forms regimental tradition. You know, when my father was a career soldier, wounded in 1945, and if you're facing the enemy in the trenches, it's the regiment we are fighting for. It's what is on the flag.
Institutional memory.
You have to have that. It confers discipline.
Look at Canada. Look at that.
No, but even they, in order to survive, had to take on the Conservative mantle and branding and the party.
Reverse takeover.
Well, I don't buy reverse takeover. We'll see. I don't want to be rude to those whom I like.
You say what you like.
And have time for.
When you'll be talking, Jeffrey Cox, no one's listening to it.
I have an enormous sense of the mission of the Conservative Party. I do believe that if it's not the Conservative Party, it can't be anybody else. I think that many of those in Reform are Conservatives who are frustrated and angry with the way we let down the country over the last 5 years. And I do think we let down the country, if only because of the appearance we gave of forgetting what we were there for and the mission that we had.
Even the historians will say, I think, the party was discombobulated by that Brexit choice. It wasn't Labour's policy, it wasn't Tory policy, and then the Conservatives had to deliver it, having given the people that choice. And I think it never really recovers the equilibrium over the following.
It was shaken.
Yes.
It was shaken to its core. I mean, it was shaken. The rivets were springing. The deck was groaning under the weight. I know because I was there at the time. But that's not an excuse. If we just had the long-term vision. But of course, Boris came in with very little preparation, with very little idea or plan. And so there's good mitigation, Jobber. But when you're dealing with the future of this nation and this great country that we are, there's no excuses in the end.
I don't want to give you an easy hit, Jeffrey Cox, but Labour could have started better. They appear also to lack this idea of what on earth they're doing, apart from not being the Conservatives.
Yes, I think the last sentence is exactly right. I think the problem is that there is no plan, there is no real vision for the country. There's certainly no willingness to take the kind of radical approach that our country now unquestionably needs. And I think Kemi has the potential to develop and push through such a plan, but it needs to be coherent and well thought through. The Labour Party has no plan whatsoever. And what they default to is a kind of 1970s-style tepid socialism that will gradually move further and further to the left. And that's what they're doing.
I thought Wes Streeting's remarks the weekend about being a maintenance department, that they do lack a vision, I think. That is the problem.
Yeah, I don't think Wes has got the answers to it, frankly. I think they're all jockeying for position in an extraordinary way in relation to a Prime Minister who won a 170-seat majority. But this is not a party now that has any sign of solving this country's problems.
I guess finally, I mean, the Tories do have a choice. They've made the choice has opened up between the benefits spending in the budget against supporting employment. That is a real opening, I think, for the Tories in the next.
I mean, it's not sufficient in itself.
No, but it's something.
But what it demonstrates is the Conservative Party occupies a unique space in the political spectrum, and at its best incarnation, with the discipline and determination to follow through those values, it can be a very good thing for this country, indeed an essential thing for this country.
And just finally going back to where we started, I mean, can you with this journey Kemi Badenoch's on, if there's a motor cruiser going past with Nigel Farage on board, at what point does she hop on board and go for him on the journey?
Well,
After the election or before?
That'll have to be a judgment for her, if ever. I mean, I think the concern I think I would have about that is whether or not Reform is capable of working within a coherent and disciplined environment to deliver a real outcome. They're very good, like the spectators on the sidelines, at shouting at the coach and demanding that the referee reconsider his approach. But I've seen no sign yet that they have realistic prescriptions and solutions or the discipline to deliver them.
To be on the pitch.
Quite.
So, Jeffrey Cox, happy Christmas.
And to you, Chopper, Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
And to your excellent team, and a very happy New Year.
Thank you so much. All the best. See you next year.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
So, Jeffrey Cox, thank you for joining us on Chopper's Political Podcast. My next guest today is Max Wilkinson. Max, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast. Great to have you on.
Hello,
for
Chopper.
joining us.
Pleased to be here. It was going to be Gloria when I was first invited on.
Do you mind?
No,
I'm not as good looking, am I?
Oh, well,
I'm wearing a fancy tie, though, today.
we sent out a catfishing press release this morning from the Lib Dems, and I signed it off yesterday. And then yesterday I was told I wasn't talking to Gloria, I was talking to you instead. I'm not going for a moment to suggest this is an example of catfishing.
You've been stitched up.
I'm happy to be here in general.
What is catfishing? Remind me again.
Well, it's something that happens online where someone is presented as a person who you might meet on social media or on dating apps or something, and then you turn up into someone else.
You looked at Gloria's face and saw me arriving and thought, I've been let down.
You don't look like Gloria, no.
Well,
Lovely tie, though.
I blame Rebecca, my producer, who just basically obviously misled you to come here in the first place. Well, let's before you leave, Rebecca, let's quickly ask some questions. Max, great to have you on. I thought just discuss a few areas with you of interest. The Donald Trump litigation, $10 billion. What should the BBC do?
Well, it seems like a laughably big number, doesn't it? And
it always is big in litigation.
I mean, Donald Trump's good at talking about big numbers and making people a bit shocked, isn't he? It seems to me a bit daft that he's suing the BBC over this. Clearly, the BBC got a bit of journalism wrong, right? They've apologised. It doesn't strike me that there is a case for defamation here. We all know what Donald Trump was doing around the January the 6th riots. And it was pretty clear the BBC didn't need to tune it up. That's the really weird thing. And I heard Catherine Ryan on her podcast talking about it, or maybe it was on Have I Got News For You? She was talking about the fact that it was clear what Donald Trump was trying to do, so there was no need to try to edit his words in the way the BBC did. However, of course, the big beneficiaries from all of this are other people who were trying to do down the BBC. And as a Lib Dem, it won't surprise you to hear, Chopper, that I'm someone who defends the BBC, even though we've had a go at them about...
The edit was
Yeah,
wrong.
of course, yeah.
And I mean, it's literally all from 55 minutes apart. There was no flash, no indication of an edit there.
Yeah, and no one's going to defend that journalistic error, are they? But I think the BBC is something that this country should be proud of and can be proud of. There are issues about balance within the BBC, of course, and there are some problems in the way that the governance of the BBC happens, and we need to stop political appointees to the board of the BBC. That's an important principle because it's something that's funded.
You were to get into power. You won't want to forget that. Any government gets into power will say that's a great thing to keep.
No, absolutely not.
Really?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not in politics as a Liberal Democrat because I'm hungry and thirsty for power, right? If I wanted that, I would have been another party. I'm in the Liberal Democrats because I'm a values-led guy, and I want to see my liberal values put into practice. Now, when we get into power, and I hope it will happen at some point in the future, if we do, we will put our liberal values into practice, and that is about making sure the BBC remains independent and having people like Robbie Gibb on the board, making apparent forays into editorial decisions, things like that. Not great.
He's a former BBC head of politics. He's a former director of comms at Theresa May's administration in government.
The politics.
How would you stop licence fee payers' money being paid out in any settlement or even legal fees? I mean, that's what I find so egregious, I think.
Yeah. I'm a licence fee payer. You're a licence fee payer, right?
We're paying the price of the BBC's mistakes. Now, the BBC is different in our national life because we all fund it as a country. And maybe if Donald Trump understood that, he may back down. But how would you stop our money, your and my money, the Wilkinson family money, the Hope family money being paid out to Donald Trump?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump understands very much about the way Britain works, right? As far as I can see, he just wants to undermine the things that make this country great. He's trying to drive a wedge between Britain and our European partners.
He believes in Brexit. He believes in independence and sovereignty.
Well, I mean, Brexit wasn't about independence and sovereignty for some people. For some people, it was about many things. For some people, it was about other things, right? But whichever way you voted in the referendum, you probably didn't get what you wanted out of Brexit, right? But on the Donald Trump question, he's not a man that we should trust as British people. It's clear who is benefiting from Donald Trump being part of all this dust-up, right? It's not British people. It's not the BBC. Your friend Nigel Farage, who you're on the regular show here with, right? He's benefiting quite a lot from all of this sort of stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing for the country. And when we're talking about things like the US trade deal that apparently the government has been cracking, right? Well, it's falling apart, isn't it, before our very eyes? This is why the Lib Dems are talking about making sure that we have a customs union with the EU. I've strayed some way from the original question there, Chopper, but it's important points to make.
What would you do? I'm always intrigued to ask Lib Dems what they would do if they're in power, because you can call for things as much as you like. You can hit the sweet spot on attacking Trump or attacking Brexit. More of that in a moment. But don't you just want to, if you were in power, what would you do? How can you avoid this problem of our family money going to Donald Trump in any settlement?
Well, of course,
can you?
Well, it's not. It's for the BBC to defend itself, right? I will defend the BBC and the principles of the BBC. I can't tell you in this legal case that Donald Trump has put forward in Florida, apparently under Florida's defamation laws. I don't know how they apply in the UK. My suspicion is
that BBC hangs.
My suspicion. Yeah, I mean, my suspicion is this will be kicked out, right? But
wait and see.
And that's a much easier answer than me saying, well, I should stop the licence fee payers' money going to Donald Trump.
Perhaps cut the salaries of big stars or cut money where it's cut spending to pay the bill. Maybe.
We should just talk less about Donald Trump. That'd be much easier, wouldn't it?
Well, we would do, but you talk about Donald Trump a lot. I was at your party conference this year. I got the Lego of the character.
Yeah.
Donald Trump and his friend Nigel Farage, as you say. And you mentioned Brexit moments ago. Though those are the two themes of Ed Davies' leadership, that and social care, which I think gets a lot of cross-party support. But you do go on about
cost of living as well, though.
Cost of living too. But Brexit and Trump are the two main areas. I mean, you mentioned our customs union. That means ripping up these trade deals. We have agreed to torturous months with India, Australia, South Korea, America.
You're a proper journalist and a clever man, right? You know as well as I do that these trade deals that are being negotiated around the world are piddling in comparison to the trade that we benefited from with the EU. Now, actual proper studies by real economists, actually American ones, right? You might not expect them to be saying this if they were pro-American or pro-Trump or whatever, but they're saying we're losing about 8% of GDP from Brexit, right? Now, what's the India trade deal worth? What, 0.1? Right,
growing over decades henceforth. Greater.
Yeah, but how are we going to catch up with 8% with 0.1? The South Korea trade deal, which was struck, and I saw Chris Bryant, a famous Remainer, standing up and hailing this deal. Right, and Chris Bryant, decent guy.
You can believe
I like Chris Bryant, But that trade deal is basically, I think, replicating what we had when we were members of the European Union, because they had a trade deal with South Korea. And then when you talk about the American trade deal, well, we've seen that crumbling apart already, haven't we? The deal on tech, where Starmer and Trump had their things signed, right? And they were telling us
or been held in abeyance. Maybe
we can't trust Trump on these trade deals, though, can we? This is a nonsense. What we
he loves this country, you know that. He's got family members from here. He's Anglophile more than the previous presidents were.
He should prove it by being nicer to us and not trying to undermine our key institutions.
Deals from that was being nice. And we got a better deal on tariffs, of course.
Oh, come on. That's like me saying I'm going to kick you in the shins instead of kicking you in the nuts.
How do we get to your customs union? I mean, where would it be in that? We kick me in the nuts. If you said on my podcast, but I'll accept.
This is a chitty chatty podcast, right? We can get away with that kind of thing. Free speech on GB News. There we go.
Absolutely no problem. Customs union means we are rule takers, not rule makers. At least in these trade deals, we're equal parties with a kind of third party court deciding any disputes. But customs union is not great for the UK. We just have to suck up what the EU gives us.
Well, basically, we're taking that kind of approach anyway, aren't we? Because we've got to have alignment with the EU on trade to be able to trade in and out. What's happened at the moment, and I'm a pro-business liberal, right? One of the reasons I'm a Liberal Democrat is because I believe in liberal markets, which most other parties actually don't when you peel back the veneer of the messaging. I want business to be able to thrive. And for that to happen, businesses in my constituency need to be able to buy and sell things from Europe and to Europe in a way that is efficient for them. And prices in our shops are going up as a result of Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, which was backed by Nigel Farage. That is undeniable.
Other issues too, cost of fuel and making it.
Of course,
you can't blame Brexit for everything.
But if we were in a customs union, the bureaucracy that businesses that I meet in my constituency have to put up with would be lessened. That means that there's less costs on the input side, right, for what they're doing. Whether they're buying or whether they're selling to Europe. And that means that the prices that you and I are paying in the shops are higher than they otherwise would be. No one's denying that fuel costs going up, and Ukraine is a factor as well, of course. But we've got to do what we should be doing. And it's a dereliction of duty on the part of the current government not to be pursuing a closer alignment of trade, right, with the EU.
It just hasn't been done properly yet. It's been done by people who try to mitigate the bad effects. The point about Brexit is to give sovereignty back to you, to 650 MPs to run the country. If one lot can't do it, the next lot come in. I mean, what Brexiteers don't understand is why people who are Remainers or want to go back to as you were before want to give all this power away to Brussels, the often unelected parts of Brussels, rather than keep it for yourselves. That's the point of all that. You're a liberal. You must understand that.
Look, I'm a liberal, right? And when I was at university, I used to meet Socialist Workers' Party, the Communist Party. They were always there at the trade stands at Freshers' Week and all that sort of stuff. And they're all around, right? You've met these people. They say the problem is that proper communism and proper socialism has never been done, right? And they say, well, the USSR, that was a disaster, wasn't it? All those countries behind the Iron Curtain, they didn't do very well. And the Brexiteers, the hardcore Brexiteers, are now making exactly the same arguments. If only it was done in the way that I wanted. And that's probably the only thing that the communists and the Brexiteers and the socialists and the Brexiteers have in common. Although there were a lot of people from the left who bizarrely voted for Brexit, which was a mystery to me, Chopper. The issue is, though, if we have a customs union, we are going to be bringing in about £25 billion extra per year to offset the £90 billion cost of Brexit so far. And at the same time, the businesses that you and I want to succeed will have an easier time dealing with Europe. And all these piddling little trade deals that the government is claiming are doing really well are not delivering anything like what a customs union would. Well, how long do we have to wait? How long do I have to wait?
We're nearly out of time on this podcast. I was talking to
New Year's resolution for you before we go, Chopper. New Year's resolution. GB News. GB News is the home of free speech. So for 2026, get a Liberal Democrat to host a show on GB News in the way that you get Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Lee Anderson to do so. If you're the home of free speech, I will come and host a show on your channel whenever you want.
Max Wilkinson, that's a challenge and not one I can accept because I don't run the channel in that sense. I'm the political editor, but I can take it back. Briefly, Erasmus, that's a good thing, is it? And next year, probably for you, freedom of movement for young people 18 to 30, that's a promising development for you, even though some would say it's betraying elements of the Brexit ideal.
Well, of course, the Erasmus scheme is something that we had before, and we didn't need to leave it as a result of Brexit. We chose to, which denies actually all of these opportunities that young people, including your producer, apparently enjoyed when they're at university. On the
She's born in Ormskirk. She's a basically she's from the northwest of England. But yeah, carry on.
On the point about youth mobility, this is something that actually is really pretty popular, because everyone knows the youth mobility deal that we have with other countries around the world already. It's a time limited thing, right? What you get is basically someone turning up, and they're 18 to 30. They turn up, they've got a limited period of time, and then they leave when that time limit is up. And so effectively, in the long term, almost no impact on immigration at all in the longer term figures. So that's a good thing, right? And even Reform voters think this is a good idea.
Max Wilkinson, I can ask you one final question, and it is a serious question, so I want to change the tone slightly. You set your points out on the asylum reforms for this government. You said the UK has a long and proud history of responding with compassion to those fleeing horrors, and I think you were critical broadly of the revoking of a legal duty to provide asylum seekers with accommodation and the like under this Labour government. And the response from Shabana Mahmood shocked many people, because she said, in a sense, all right for you to say that, you as a group of people maybe, or Max Wilkinson perfectly, on your own. But she and her family have been called dreadful words, because these challenging of dealing with asylum has not been dealt with locally. Were you shocked by what she said to you?
I wasn't expecting that response.
She used the effing P word, didn't she?
She did.
To describe that. And it did.
She did.
It did really, channel a focus on that debate.
Well, clearly she's a Muslim woman, and I'm a white man, and I would never have had the kind of abuse in my life that she has obviously had to put up with. And no one would suggest that the circumstances were otherwise. That doesn't mean, though, that the types of rhetoric that sometimes people use around this are appropriate. And when the Home Secretary made her statement, she had spent several days in the news using phrases around immigration and asylum. And it's important to separate those two topics, actually, because legal immigration and asylum are two separate topics that the government must resolve separately. But she made that statement in the House of Commons after days of using some language which a lot of people would have found inappropriate. Things like immigration and asylum is tearing the country apart, she had said. And I don't think that's a helpful contribution to the debate. What I want as a liberal is an immigration system where we have a compassionate approach to asylum, so refugees who are fleeing war, who we have a duty to look after, and every other country in the world has a duty to look after as well. They get looked after. But also in terms of legal migration, it's important that we separate those two subjects out, as I said, because legal migration is an important part of getting the economy right. So businesses have people with the skills that they need to work in them, but also solving the longer-term demographic challenges that this nation has.
She was saying, in a sense, I think, it's all right for you, maybe as a white person criticising this treatment, but my community is dealing with the rising tensions caused by not dealing with the issue of legal migration. And people I know are called the effing P word, because... And I want to help them, and you aren't helping them by being soft in this area.
I don't think I'm doing what you would categorise as soft. What I'm saying is we need a pragmatic system that actually works. There is a silent majority of people in this country, Chopper, who basically think that immigration's been a bit high over the last few years, right? Or they think immigration hasn't been too high over the last few years. Now, there's a discussion around that. They also think that we need an asylum system that works, that we are doing our bit to help. And moreover, most of these people are really worried about the economy and public services. And there is a real risk that in this discussion around immigration and asylum, and it's perfectly right that as a country we have this discussion, and I would not seek to say that anyone who tries to open this discussion is doing the wrong thing. But we need to have a proper discussion about how we make sure that we get it right and we have a system that works.
And the tone is wrong from this government?
The tone has been wrong at times from this government. The tone has been wrong from the past government. The tone has been wrong from other politicians as well, some of whom appear on GB News.
At all channels, I would say.
But yeah, and in all channels, it's perfectly reasonable for people to have that right to say what they think. I will say it my way, and I will call it as I want to say it. But it's important that we have a proper debate and a proper discussion based in facts, and also that the discussion is separating asylum and immigration, because they are two separate issues, and we need to look after those people who are in that silent majority as well, not just the people who are either on one end saying all immigration is all bad all the time, or at the other end, people like Zach Polanski saying, basically open the doors and give everyone a hug, and this is all a big distraction.
There's a middle ground there.
There is, yeah, and that's what we will speak to.
Max Wilkinson, thank you for that. An important way to explain what happened there. And it's a contentious issue, the whole area of migration and how we approach that. It matters. Before we leave you, I'm going to ask you about your plans for 2026. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Well, on a personal level, I like to spend more time with my wife and daughter, but as a politician, that doesn't always happen. So I will hope that I will continue to be a reasonable voice speaking for the silent majority on matters to do with immigration and asylum in Parliament, but also dealing with whatever comes on my plate as the Home Affairs spokesperson. And I'll give GB News a New Year's resolution as well. You've got people like Nigel Farage, Lee Anderson and Jacob Rees-Mogg doing shows which are very popular on your channel, right? Get a Liberal Democrat voice presenting a programme in 2026 on GB News. And if you want me to do it, I'll happily do it.
Oh, there we go. That's a challenge. Again, for my bosses, not for me, because I'm the fit editor. I will take it back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chopper.
Max, thank you. Now, Jeffrey Cox is still with us on Chopper's political podcast, clearing his throat. You've got a slightly different...
Yeah, I apologise to you and to your listeners, Chris, because I have this, what the doctors are calling a post-viral cough. It's gone on for days, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, and we're going to have your annual Christmas reading for our listeners and viewers. So Jeffrey Cox, one of the best recognised voices in Westminster. It's a privilege to have you here with your Christmas reading. Take it away.
Well, this is by Longfellow, and it's called Christmas Bells. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound, the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.
And thank you for joining us wherever you are listening to this podcast. It's our last one before Christmas. Don't forget you can vote for Chopper's political podcast at the Political Podcast Awards. Polls remain open until January the 9th, 2026. The link for voting for this podcast in that description. I tweet to Christopher on X. What's your Twitter handle, Max Wilkinson?
at mpmwilco.
Okay, so
That's not a reference to my job or ambitions. It's a reference to my initials.
thank you. And sending thoughts to him there. Email me, of course, any thoughts on the podcast, any ideas for the future, any plans for 2026. Christopher Hope at gbnews.uk or Chopper at gbnews.uk if you like. If you enjoyed the show, please do tell your friends. If you really enjoyed it, like Max Wilkinson has, give a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. That helps other people to find it. Thanks to the brilliant team of colleagues behind this podcast. The bosses, of course, Mick Booker, Jeff Marsh, and the podcast elves, Santa's elves, Rebecca Nunes and George Macmillan this Christmas time. Most importantly of all, thank you again for listening to the podcast. If you want more Chopper in your life, and they do, and who doesn't, catch me during the week on GB News with your latest political updates. And Max Wilkinson is chucking away in the corner. He's studying what's more me in his life. Keep up to date with our best reporting on our website, gbnews.com. But until next time, it's Christmas. Cheerio! Ho, ho, ho! Ho, 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 ho!
Chopper Christmas.